Welcome to the I Am Vinyl podcast. My name is Pete LaRussa, and once again, I am here with Joey from the Rock Strikes 10 podcast. And we're glad you're here tuning in, whether it's on YouTube or on cnjradio.com, or if you're a subscriber via Apple Podcasts, or if you follow us on Spotify. Either way, we're glad you're here. And for this episode, Joey and I are going to sit and discuss the latest album by, as you can already see it on your device, Iron Maiden, with their latest album, Senjutsu. And I'm going to play some tracks from, it's going to be, there's the hype sticker. I'm going to play some tracks here from the Amazon exclusive silver and black 180 gram vinyl edition. I'll just show the back cover here as well.
Which cover do you like better? Let's start off with that.
I like the front cover better.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got that Eddie back in the day on the Maiden Japan EP with like the katana. But never went full like classic samurai Eddie. So this is kind of like this neat fan service, I think, right off the bat. Like, ooh, we finally get the full nines. Like, so even just going with the whole Eddie thing to start off, because that's everybody's first impression. So right off the bat, I was like, I like that imaging. So
yeah, well, that's the thing was, the first time that, the album cover was revealed, how they were doing that slow reveal by posting up all the album covers prior and then leading up to this. Yeah, I was following. And then as soon as they posted this up, me, the Verderame brothers, and some of our other friends on a thread on Facebook that we've had for a few years, we were just all in agreement. And immediately it was just like, we all loved the whole Japanese theme. And I know that was another thing that we mentioned too, was, it's the first time they've done this since the Maiden Japan EP from 1981, which actually just hit its 40th anniversary a few days ago.
Yeah, good point. And like I said, even then, it's really just a regular Eddie, like holding the sword. It's not like, it's not samurai Eddie. It's almost like he had killed a ninja prior to and just stole a sword afterwards. Like, this is like the Eddie that existed back in the early days of the old samurai ways, and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, so. And I gotta point out too, because it's kind of like sort of a source of discontent for some Iron Maiden fans, but some of those Maiden fans are like a little ticked off about, why does he have these fangs sticking out, these teeth? What's up with the fangs? I don't know.
At this point, it's like, as long as it's not Dance of Death, then shut up.
Oh, I mean, yes.
Okay, so that's, we can all agree that that's the worst cover.
Yes.
What's your barometer? What's your top cover? Had to pick one, gun to your head.
The best Iron Maiden album cover ever?
Yeah, I'm doing a little bonus question for you here.
Live After Death.
Okay, yeah,
it's the first one I ever seen that really attracted me to want to know about the band. If you ask me right off the top of my head, that's the first one that I think of right away. That album cover is just one of the greatest album covers of all time.
Sure.
What you said, as far as, comparing to Dance of Death, you have nothing to say. If you're going to, make these comments about, fangs and, these little things about this version of Eddie that you don't like, please refer to Dance of Death and then get back to all of us.
Yeah, exactly. Like, even like some of the quote unquote throwaway live albums that I really like Real Live one, Real Dead one, even the Donington one, like, I'm fine with those covers, like, even before Dance of Death happened, so like the fact that we got betrayed so badly on that one, I think we're all still damaged from it. So seeing that looks like honestly, this new one, okay, maybe it's not as cool as Peace of Mind or Power Slave. It's hard to break through that nostalgia glass window,
absolutely,
kind of glass ceiling. That's a better term, but it's not too far off from maybe being able to hang with those album covers if people really think about it. So right off the bat, I think the cover is a win. So
I fully agree.
That's when you start taking the cellophane off and putting the record on. So let's get to that part of it. So,
well, yeah, I just, there's one more thing I want to mention here. There's also some other complaints about, it's a boring album cover, like, because there's like nothing in the background. Like, they're kind of like following this thing. The last album cover, Book of Souls, and the Book of Souls Live, there wasn't very much in the background. So this album very much fits in place. Like, if you're shelving them on your CD or your vinyl shelf, they're kind of uniform.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with the stark black background and focusing on Eddie. Eddie
Yeah.
is the centerpiece of Iron Maiden, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe obviously there could have been an idea maybe somewhere early on to like, hey, let's do a scene. Maybe there could have been a scene there, but it's like if you're not going to paint it, if you're not going to rigs paint it anymore, like Power Slave and have a cool front and back, then don't do it. Just do the best you can. I guess it's just different times we live in, you know. So
And that's the thing. You said it right there. It's different times. We're talking about a different band. Derek
yeah,
Riggs is no longer in the picture. And that's the other thing. Like a lot of Iron Maiden fans are just pining for, Derek Riggs to come back and work with Iron Maiden on these album covers. Obviously, it's not happening. He did his
yeah,
thing with the Brave New World album cover. He contributed to that one. You know, time moves on. People move on, bands move on. Most importantly, that's the thing I want to talk about with this album. Bands move on. So, I guess with that being said, you want to start talking about the record itself?
yeah. Let's go for it, man.
Well, alrighty. So let's start off with the opening track, the title track, Senjutsu. And this one is written by Adrian Smith and Steve Harris. And it totals out at 8 minutes and 20 seconds. So right off the bat, we get a long epic to open the album. So I have some notes that I put down for each track. And so with this one, this is an opening track that is actually not up tempo, unlike many previous Iron Maiden albums where you kind of know like, okay, this album's going to start off with something very up tempo. A lot of times
Yeah,
it's usually the first single. This album,
yeah.
it's
It
pretty
kind of
unique in that it has this like very dramatic, slow building opening track
Yeah, and
for the title track.
Final Frontier did that too. So like at least
Yes.
initially, like and it goes into something up tempo, but it's like this crazy cinematic build, like more than they've ever done before.
Yeah.
It was a little off-putting, but I didn't hate it. But yeah, the slower tempo of the opening track definitely, honestly, makes it not one of my favorite opening tracks I've ever done. I kind of figured out early on after the first couple of songs, I'm like, okay, they're building to something,
Mm-hmm.
So this is an album much like Book of Souls and some other ones they've done. It requires some patience, and I'm not defending all of these choices, and we'll talk about them as we go on, but I kind of knew right off the bat, like I said, within those two songs, I'm like, okay, they're going to build up to something. So
Mm-hmm.
that being said, I didn't love this opening song, the title track, but I knew something was coming. So I didn't dismiss it right off the bat for that reason. So, of course, here's one thing you can always expect because people still don't understand that they've gone prog pretty much ever since really the ending of Somewhere in Time, which leads, of
Sure.
course, the Seventh Son being like really putting your big foot in the prog thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's been like this for a while. So if you're going to talk about the first 6, 7, 8 records, like it's already been there for a long, long time. They just went full bore with it once the reunion happened, basically. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I think that's why people love Brave New World so much, as far as the modern era of Maiden, because I think they kind of didn't want to scare people right off the bat. And it's
Fair.
got shorter songs on it. It's a great record. And maybe for that reason, people will tell you that. And they may not be wrong. But it's if you don't know by now, then what do you even bother commenting on it? That's the part I don't understand.
Yeah. And to your point about Brave New World, out of the modern era of Maiden, ever since Bruce and Adrian came back in 1999,
Hmm.
yeah, that's my favorite Iron Maiden album of this era.
Yeah, me too.
Having said that, yeah, they ever since A Matter of Life and Death in 2006, they've really ramped up these long epic tracks. So this has been going on for, over 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And we should mention too that they started recording this album and I think finished it in 2019. And the
Yeah.
only reason it didn't come out earlier was because of everything we've had to go through with COVID.
I honestly just think they got an offer to do a lucrative tour. So they probably put it on hold for that reason. Oh yeah, let's go do that hits tour, which I wish I'd have gone to. Now I didn't. I don't know why I didn't go to that last tour, but it looks excellent and the live album is great. I love that live album. So great set list. But yeah, moving on.
You're talking
Back
about the one from Mexico City
yeah,
that came
yeah,
out earlier this year.
yeah.
Another thing I want to mention is something that I have here in my notes about the title track here, the opening track. And we're going to hear this again throughout other parts of the album. I'm interested to know of your thoughts on this particular part of the record that I heard immediately to my ears and thought, oh, well, this is kind of interesting. I don't recall really hearing this particular type of sound on many Maiden records, if at all. You know, maybe I've forgotten. I don't know. But it stuck out to me enough where I felt like, that's kind of new and unique for Iron Maiden. And it's these synths, which it looks like Steve Harris was in charge of all the synthesizers and recorded all the synthesizers on this record.
It's got some Somewhere in Time vibes for sure.
Yes.
You know.
On this particular track and on others, and credit to my brother here for helping me out here with the name of the sound being used here. I asked him, I said, have a listen to, I told him to listen to Stratego because it also happens in there. So I said, can you tell me what this particular synth sound is? So on this track, throughout the choruses, you hear these really high synth notes. They're kind of airy, right? So I asked my brother about this, and he says it could either be a string pad or a string bell pad. So I don't know if you notice it, but they're really mixed very high as far as overall, where it's almost like they're louder than Bruce's vocals.
Oh, for sure they are. Like, that was one of the things I actually did write down, but I wrote it down so much that I didn't even have to go to my notes here, is that early on, especially, I'm just not feeling Bruce as much as I feel like I should. Like, I don't know if it's health, but I know him to be a very strong singer still. You know, I saw the Book of Souls tour and he sounded awesome. So I'm like, what's going on? Why is he being buried in the mix? I mean, it's the first Maiden album where I could actually say that. And I don't try to be one of those production nerds, but it's so obvious here on this record.
Yeah, I'm not sure why his vocals are, because I noticed that too. And I know which parts you're talking about.
Yeah. Do it so early on the record.
And then yeah, his vocals are kind of buried, but those synth notes, this is the question I have. Don't you think they're a little too loud in the mix? And it probably would have been nice. If I have a major negative to say about this album, and I know some other Iron Maiden fans have expressed this, they're not big fans of Kevin Shirley's production. I'm not really one of those guys, but if I had to say one thing that I wish they would have paid more attention to, is to bring those synth notes down a little bit. In some songs, they're mixed more appropriately, but in this song, and I'll probably say it in a few more songs, but in this song for sure, they're definitely a little too loud. And you know, you're in the studio, you have all this time, you know, to refine things.
Yeah,
I think Kevin Shirley or whoever should have probably had Steve do a few retakes to get the timing down a little bit better, because sometimes he's hitting the notes a little off, like just a little bit off, and it happens in other parts of the record. And when you mix a sound like that so high, it's going to be so obvious to the listener. It certainly was for me.
I didn't even notice that in my first couple of runs, but that's only because I was so distracted mentally by like, what's going on with Bruce here? Like, and people that say that Kevin Shirley is like a Steve Harris yes man, it's hard to not say that he's not when you hear a certain mix like this, because it doesn't service Bruce.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with
that.
Have
a nice balance. There should be a nice balance. If they want to put that on the track, yes, we should hear it, but it shouldn't be dominating. You know, it's like it's like a bad TV drama score where the music's so loud, and you're like, oh, I get it, dude, I get it. Like, how come I can't hear the people talking? How come I'm just hearing the music now?
It feels like, listen, I've done this because, you know, like you find like a new sound, like when you're recording something, and or you come up with a guitar part or something that you really want to stand out in the mix, and you know, try as you might, you know, you put it up there, and you know, somebody will inevitably tell you, no, it's too loud, or, we should really bring that down. And then you're like, I'm, thinking in terms of like working with like Jerry Farley with in the Space Period records, when we did the Space Period records, and he had to kind of like, tame me down a little bit with certain things.
Right.
I just wish like, Kevin Shirley could just be like, we could take it down a tad.
Yeah.
I mean, what the fuck? And plus, like I said, have him play the thing on time. Why you got, I'm sure I can't imagine they were using analog. They were probably, recording with like a Pro Tools, digital setup of some kind with a grid.
I can't tell because most classic bands finally figured out like record on the 2-inch and then edit on Pro Tools. Like that's the way to make a classic sounding record. Van Halen did it on their last album, and Kiss did it on Monster. Like that's how you achieve that sound that you might be looking for. Because Pro Tools is easy to edit with it, but don't record on it. I don't know what they're doing on this one. I really don't. But like with that kind of approach musically, like there's so much going on. And I hate to say this because I'm not the biggest fan of instrumentals, but that probably should have been an instrumental, maybe somewhere in the middle of the record or something. I don't know, like a bridge gap. And I even had a whole thing like, man, I liked Book of Souls a lot. I really like Book of Souls. And I think it had really good balance to it. This one isn't like, I don't know. I'm not in love with the sequence on this album. I almost feel like they should have broken them into 2 parts, honestly. And they've never done that before. That'd be kind of cool if they did it for the first time ever. There's so many epics on this album. I know I'm kind of doing the broad review now, but that's all I keep thinking about when I go back to this record. I thought about it. I listened to it again this morning, and I'm like, this probably should be 2 albums spaced out a year apart from each other. And I think you have equal sounding songs that would belong on separate album releases, honestly. And maybe that's just because everybody's been talking about the Use Your Illusion anniversary this week. But
yeah,
I say put it out a year apart from each other, because I think and you could keep the imaging, like make it, keep the samurai bit. That way, it's the same thought. That way people can mentally understand, okay, this was all done basically at the same time. I really think that's what they should have done, because I just don't know about some of the choices, like I said, in the mix. But if you have an instrumental that maybe even closes off that first record, and then you wait for that second album to come out, I don't know. I'm painting with broad strokes here. I'm laying a lot of track, but those are like I guess if I have any negative things to say, like maybe I'd go with that, because there's only so many of these you can do. I guess they just want to be just like, we just want hardcore fans. We want to be able to play big places still, but just have a hardcore fan base. That's what they're telling me, like in this last 15 years, I guess.
Well, I think you and I probably view this album definitely a little bit differently just from the start here. This particular opening track, I'll say when I first heard it, I don't think I was overly excited about it, because it again, it's not an up tempo track.
Yeah.
It's this slow build, but the more I've listened to the album, and I know we discussed even before we hit record that I've listened to it probably a bit more than you, just because I've had more time to listen to it.
Yeah, it's like you said you've heard it about 20 times. I've heard it 2 times.
Close. No, not 20. I don't think 20 times yet, but definitely over 10.
So if anybody's going to trash me for my opinion, just give me the benefit of a doubt. A year from now, I could come on the show and be like, "Hey, this was a grower. It sounds cliche."
Yeah, exactly. That's
albums
fine.
are like that.
Exactly that, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, because there's certain songs on this record that I would say, they had to kind of grow on me a little bit from listening to it more, and within the context of the album. I think this song would fall in line as one of them. Like I said, at the start, you're so used to a lot of Iron Maiden albums, kicking off at full throttle, Yeah.
Invade us! Be quick, I'll be dead.
Oh yeah, I mean, songs like that. Yeah, exactly. Even like Caught Somewhere in Time.
Yeah, I think Wicker Man might be
Wicker
my
Man. Yeah,
opener, like on any of their albums, honestly, and I mean that. Like maybe like there's Where Eagles Dare, and then there's Wicker Man for me personally. So yeah. Anyway.
And I totally get that, because we've kind of become conditioned to that. And then you mentioned the Final Frontier had its own very unique intro at the time.
Yeah.
So, but then, like I said, the more listens I've had, especially when I was, putting together the vinyl transfers, and certain songs like this one kind of grew on me a little bit more. So what I like about the opening track, I think the choruses are pretty strong. I think they have a good, memorable melody. Again, I just think the synths, they're just a little too high. Like, give Bruce the stage. Steve, hang out in the back. You got the bass. So you could turn down the synths. It doesn't have to be so much of you present. In certain parts. But at the end of the day, I would say that this is a fairly strong opening track that sets the tone for the rest of the album. So, you and I may not fully agree on that, but that is where I stand, Joey.
That's all right. I respect your opinion. And like I said, it's interesting because, like I said, I might wind up putting this way up high in the catalog at some point. I'm not there with it yet, but I didn't hate it when I first heard it. I know that sounds awful, but I am still into it in the sense of, like, I'll be sitting down with it more, be analyzing it. I've done the noise canceling headphone version.
Same
And
here.
I've done the out in the house version.
Same
so
here.
Like, I'll be doing more of those. And I'll even do the walk track, which is a fun way to go, especially with Maiden albums. It's like,
Yeah,
you're going
I've listened to it while going on a long walk. I did the same thing.
Okay, so I still have yet to do some of those things. So,
all right, well, why don't we move on to the next track? So the next track is actually the second video that they just released recently for the song Stratego. So I'm sure a lot of people our age were familiar with the old board game.
I was gonna say,
Stratego.
if they didn't have the full demographic of, like, the nerdy prog fans at this point, it's like, we're gonna get all the rest of you in just on the title of this song alone.
Yep. I was joking around with my brother. Like, as soon as I saw there was a song called Stratego, I was like, all I can think of is that goddamn board game, that he had in the '80s with the old general on the front of the board game, with that grin on his face. Like,
yeah. I look forward to their next first single off their next album called Dungeon Master. So, all right. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. We all think we're so funny. Okay.
Bruce did mention the board game when talking about the song, so it's clearly, we're not the only ones. I don't know if it's solely based on the board game, but it's surely partially influenced. If he is mentioning it in interviews when he's talking track by track.
I don't think it's out of line to say that some fan probably came up to him at some point and was like, "Man, it's perfect to play Stratego with the album A Matter of Life and Death."
Yeah, there you go. I could see that too. I could see that too, for sure.
Like, done deal. Stratego.
Yeah. So this song is written by Janet Gears and Steve Harris, topping out at 4 minutes and 59 seconds, and it's the first of only 3 songs under 7 minutes or more. So
which makes it a single by default.
Yes, yes. Like, yeah, as we mentioned, this is the second video that they just released recently, another animated video special.
Yeah.
Very cool video. I would recommend checking out.
Yeah, I like the song.
Yeah. And again, so I mentioned here the first up-tempo track on the record. Yeah. And once again, we get those synths a little too high in the mix.
Here they come. Yeah, I know. It's just like,
that string bell pad once again.
And this is kind of a, degree separation from Kevin Shirley, because he worked with Rush before. So, but all I could think of was, are we smelling another Vapor Trails? Is this going to be their Vapor Trails? Like, are we going to get a remix down the road maybe or something? I'm already thinking that way, it's like, because that's the one I've got. I've got that one. That's the one I have on vinyl.
I got that too. That's a great record.
Yeah. It just happened to be down here. How weird is that?
Just happened to be there.
Wasn't in my notes.
I know that, like, I'm making this note about the synths, and it's going to happen again. Spoiler alert. But I don't know if it's going to be to the point where they're going to remix this album someday because of it.
But if you remix, you kind of admit defeat in a way.
Sure. Why do you think Metallica hasn't remixed Injustice for All?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
I don't want to remix that record because they don't be admitting defeat, James.
Yeah, exactly. And Dave Mustaine did it the other way because he's a psychopath. So, that's.
We can go all day on that one.
Oh, and we're gonna record a whole new episode right now. We're gonna can this record. No, I'm just kidding. That'll probably be more of a fan thing, like, a fan mix somehow, if they can just roll it through some of these cool apps that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of like the best thing I saw this year. This is my sidebar for the episode. That guy that hit the piece of shit racist guy with the tea can in the
Yes.
convenience store, and the
Yes.
guy took the sample of that and put it like in GarageBand or whatever, made
Yep.
that the snare drum noise for this track he did. I mean, you gotta love technology when things like that happen, at least, right? Okay, so
I did find some of those amusing, the ones that I did watch.
tremendous, absolutely
Well,
aces.
so we
I'm
could
gonna get that
agree.
guy to produce the next Maiden record, actually.
So I guess we could both agree. Stratego's a good song.
Yes,
I
that's the opener on my dream second album. Like, that's the one that opens up the second album that I have in my pipe dream. So.
Well, to that point, the last note that I made on this one was, had they not released The Writing on the Wall first as their initial preview track for the album, this would have been a perfect lead choice.
Yeah,
as a lead single, a first video. So I'm kind of surprised in a way that they did go with The Writing on the Wall, which actually happens to be the very next track, if you want to just jump right ahead here.
Yeah, I'm gonna slightly disagree with you. I think Writing on the Wall is a tad catchier, honestly. I think maybe it's because it's shorter and tighter. I believe it's a little shorter, but
no, it's actually a little longer.
A little longer. It's the one that's like a minute longer than Stratego. I couldn't remember which one was longer.
Yeah, The Writing on the Wall is written by Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson, and it times out at 6 minutes and 13 seconds. So yeah, about a minute and almost a minute and a half.
But I think it's probably the catchiest song on the record, and I don't think it's a coincidence when you mention the writers on that either. That's how I feel about it. So and by the way, I love that era of Bruce's solo career where Adrian comes on board, because
it's great. Probably the best part of his solo career.
Great songwriting in there for sure. And anyway, but yeah, it gave me that feel, maybe just because that's the perception, but yeah, I could totally see why that was the lead. Well, Writing on the Wall I think it's a good enticement song for the album. Honestly, it's almost a bit misleading in a way.
Yeah. Well, I'll explain. I guess, look, maybe I'm sort of like some of those older Iron Maiden fans that kind of, I don't want to say I'm one of them who refuses to really embrace anything they've done after Power Slave. But I think in some senses, when Iron Maiden releases a lead single, I expect it to be bombastic, up tempo. And, this is conversations I know that I've even had with Joe Malazzo from Kiss Roundtables. And, and at first, we were all talking about this track, and, we thought it was a great track. I liked the chorus, but it was just something about it that it wasn't really getting us like 100% fully excited just yet for this album.
Yeah.
Then I bought the album. Then, you hear the song a lot more within the context of the album. So again, it's kind of like what I was saying with Senjutsu, but with this song, way better. I mean, The Writing on the Wall is one of the best songs on the album. I would say it's a stronger song than Senjutsu, as far as, comparing where I'm saying, songs that didn't initially overly excite me as a fan listening to the record for the first time, or listening to the track for the first time as when it was a preview. Yeah. But over time and more listens, now I see it as one of those Iron Maiden tracks and singles that can stand up there with the very best of them, and that can be, memorable with time. And just some other notes here. This is the second of only 3 songs under 7 minutes or more. And, for me, and I think, a few people probably felt the same way. I love the intro, and it just immediately gives you a feeling you're about to watch an old Western movie.
Yeah.
And just one other thing that I want to mention, and I believe I try to be really good at knowing like who's playing the leads after so many years of listening to Maiden and watching the concerts. You kind of get an idea, like that's Adrian Smith, that's Dave Murray, or that's Janet Gears. I think the guitar solo that hits exactly at 4 minutes and 24 seconds, I think it's Adrian Smith. That is absolutely one of my favorite moments on this record, leading to the final chorus of the song.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can't I didn't even think of I never think about those things when I'm initially listening to the album. Like I I kind of honestly I do miss the days where they would credit those things. Like I'm sure some bands still do that, but it's very few and far between. But I remember like, growing up on the Twisted Sister records, like it's literally left channel, right channel, man. Like so like made it easy for me. But yeah, I never think about those things. I guess that's one of the fun surprise things that I just do now when I go see them live. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, that's their solo. Yeah, I guess that's how I do it now. So I never think about that honestly, but yeah, no, but I appreciate the dialogue. Don't get me wrong.
As far as the track itself, I mean, would you agree with me that it's, one of their strongest tracks of their overall career as far as a single and something to be memorable?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing it live most shows. That's kind of how I look at, songs that could potentially be there for the long haul, it's they have such a high bar for singles in their
Mm.
career. Like, to me Wasted Years is one of the
Oh,
most perfect songs ever.
it is.
I think that is the absolute peak of a single. If I'm going to put a representation of Iron Maiden on a compilation for someone that has no idea who they are, I'm gonna put that. I mean, I might think to put like Run to the Hills or Trooper. Like to me, like Trooper is the only other one that could probably hang with that. But they're two completely different types of songs.
Yeah,
So
Wasted Years is the type of song you could play for that cynic that thinks, heavy metal music is devil worshiping music and
yeah, or
like
just
all that
not
all that
very good,
silly shit that went on back then.
or just not catchy. Like
Right.
that's still the thing that they don't think that they write catchy songs.
Yeah.
I was like, I could find you Megadeth songs, Iron Maiden songs that will completely stay with you, and be like, man, that has got a killer chorus on it, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And it's not just because it's our opinion and our taste. Like, you could play them for like any kind of musicologist, any music professor, be like, that's a well-crafted song.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
I
And
agree.
if somebody wants to come at some of these more recent Maiden albums with that, then I could definitely talk to you, because like it's important for me to like be like, this is instantly memorable to me. But when we get into things like this kind of subgenre, even though Maiden is a heavy metal band, they are obviously a prog band now as well. So they've taken kind of some of the influence of the bands that they influence, all the power metal bands, stuff like that, and they're going more prog. That's just what they do now. So doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with pop music so much.
Right.
And that's just the way it is. Like you're more about writing a line, like a guitar line that people hang on to and stuff like that. I don't think it's also a coincidence at all that Kevin Shirley really made his bones with a lot of rock fans producing Dream Theater albums early on in the 90s.
Yeah.
So it's just how it is.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect band for him to transition to. Like, because this is a band that also has a decent pop sensibility,
Mm-hmm.
that also wants to write long songs. There's a balance there. Some people can pull it off and some can't. More often than not, Maiden pull it off. So
Yeah. Can't really disagree.
sorry, I'm always going into the long review like it's like I'm gonna put it in a book or
No, look,
something.
it gives context, to what we're talking about,
Yeah,
as
that's what I'm
far
here
as
for.
with
Color commentary and context. Thank
context.
you. Yes, king.
It definitely had to be said, because we are talking about the lead single from the record here, the first thing that they put out for fans to hear.
Yeah,
And while it may be longer than a song like Wasted Years, while it may not have the type of chorus that Wasted Years has, I think over time it's going to become one of those tracks from this era of Maiden that's going to be one of those standout singles. Did Adrian Smith write Wasted Years solely? Did he get a sole writing credit on that one?
I don't know if he's the sole writer. I should know that, but I don't know. So we'll tease that for next
I feel
time.
like he did, and it was like
Oh,
he had that one and Reach Out, and they chose Wasted Years for the record,
so
and
what?
reach and
I
reach
happen to
out.
be
There you
I'm
go.
gonna be sitting right by it. I'm like, I'm literally
And then we'll
like,
get to the next track as soon as Joey reveals the answer. I think it's solely written by Adrian Smith.
You are correct, sir.
Yes.
Just says Smith here.
Okay. So whereas that's solely written by Adrian Smith, the writing on the wall was a Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson collaboration.
Yeah.
But again, I think they did a very good job on that one, especially, the intro just sets that great tone and the sound of the acoustic guitar. I like the production on the acoustic guitar. It's very airy and ambient. So again, I think the song is a winner on this record and, continues to set a good tone for the rest of what we're going to hear. So having said that, we're going to move now into, I believe, the first really long song on the record. And it is Lost in a Lost World. This one is solely written by Steve Harris, one of a few that are solely written by Steve. And this one tops out at 9 minutes and 31 seconds. And so some of my notes here. This is my absolute favorite intro on the entire album. And I have some notes here that from just reading some interviews. And Bruce Dickinson mentioned while discussing tracks on the album, and which I agree with, very Pink Floyd-esque intro with the sound of the acoustic guitar and the synths in the background. And I like the use of a phalange effect on Bruce's vocals during the intro, along with some delays being used in perfect appropriate spots, along with the additional atmospheric background harmonies, such as those faint ahs in the background in the intro there. And you with this one, you were talking about Bruce's vocals, and this is one of those tracks where I really feel like you hear his initial set of vocals, whereas the ones that he probably recorded while the band was tracking the music. Because if I'm correct, they probably recorded and mixed this album similarly to the way they've been doing their records since A Matter of Life and Death. Maybe they were rehearsing the track, then went in, recorded it, and mixed it, and did several takes, and with Bruce singing with the band. This song, I feel like you could really hear the strain in Bruce's vocals, probably doing take after take, and you can hear his initial live, I guess, we would probably call it like a scratch track if like we were recording with Space Beard.
Right.
But I feel like you hear some of those scratch vocals, and then he went in and layered over those. On this particular track, I think you really hear it. And then the last note I have on this track, once again, those goddamn synths. They're a little high, and again, slightly off time in some spots. It's kind of hard not to hear. But overall, this is one of my favorite tracks on the album, and especially, with that intro, just one of those that as soon as I heard it the very first time, it was one of my favorite tracks. So like the first listen, this was one of the tracks that stood out to me immediately. So, all right, so let's move on to the fifth track on the album. And for those who were, waiting for one of these really short Iron Maiden tracks, well, now you got one right here with Days of Future Past, another track written by Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson. And this one tops out at a whopping 4 minutes and 3 seconds.
Bastards.
But really, again, this is the song that I'm sure a few Maiden fans would rather have, more of throughout these latest records, but we're not at that point. That's not how the band is these days. But, just needs to be said, just because it's kind of a glaring thing that, fans know about, as far as, Iron Maiden isn't one to crank out these short tracks anymore. So when we do get them and they're this short, it is pretty amazing these days. Mm-hmm. I do like the intro. I like the guitar intro of this one. Obviously, shortest song on the record, and every other track is 7 minutes or more. So, this is a mostly up-tempo song, and I think the chorus is very strong and uses that opening guitar intro as the basis in the back for the chorus. So I think that's a great recall to the intro, having that in the choruses as well. So interested to know your thoughts on this one.
I honestly, like, and I'm not just copping out here. That's everything I would have said about it. So I think you nailed it. Good job.
Thank you.
I mean, it's simple, short, to the point, just like the song, so
yeah,
I back this statement. I'll sign off on what you said.
Yeah. Again, I think, if this one is released as a single, maybe a third single, I think this could have some longevity later on as far as, Iron Maiden singles. So
yeah, no doubt. I mean, it'll be easy to animate. It's easier to animate 4 minutes than it would be 11 minutes. So I'm gonna say that's probably the can't miss third single. I mean, unless you're just gonna get a loop, like you do on Spotify. You ever see those things with like the videos?
Oh
they
yeah,
just show like the same 10 seconds over and over again. It's like hypnotic, So yeah. They change the flag color every few songs, so there's something to look forward to.
Well, let's see. Let's predict it here. This is going to be the next single and video from the record. So maybe that's going to happen. And you could say, you heard it here first. Not any other show. Right here on the I Am Vinyl podcast on cnjradio.com. So
we got a new stinger
quick
now.
Plug there. What's that?
Yeah, we got a new stinger now. I like it. promo for the show.
See, spontaneous promos. So as quick as that song was or is, I think we could move on to the next one, because we pretty much have the same thought process on that one, and really not much more to say on that one. So why don't we move on? I believe now we're moving into I guess you can call the second half of the record, because there are 10 tracks. So the next track is called The Time Machine. This one is another collaborative effort between Janet Gears, Steve Harris, topping out at 7 minutes and 9 seconds. And so some of my notes here, I like the acoustic and clean air guitar intro. I think that's great to accompany Bruce's opening lyrics. I like the verses with the lead guitars matching Bruce's vocal melody. And this also seems to be a little bit of a source of discontent for some Maiden fans. They think this is lazy songwriting. I don't know. I just think if it works and it works to the ears, and it's catchy to the ears, I think it works. I don't think it's lazy at all.
I mean, to me, lazy songwriting is using like the shit that should never be used again, like loose lips sink ships and tell me no secrets and I'll tell you no lies, or any of that kind of horse shit. Like, it's just stop times. But I'm just thinking, like, growing up and you're, in the AC/DC crocus kind of umbrella, it's like, can you guys just stop using all those cliches? Like, you got a book of cliches in the studio. Stop using them. I don't know where I was going with that, but it's not a terrible song. So, it's unfairly maligned if someone's calling it lazy. I mean, it's cruise control at worst. At worst, it's autopilot, So
yeah, it's actually one of my favorite choruses on the record. I think it's one of the stronger choruses on the album. And there's another note that I was thinking about is, out of the many songs that have been written over the years between Janet Gears and Steve Harris, I think this is one of the best.
Maybe it is that synth thing, but I just constantly keep getting like Somewhere in Time vibes. And like, even like the deepest cut on there that I can't remember the next day, no issues. Like, I still like hearing them when I hear them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't know why it makes me feel that way, but just because I don't remember something like the next day or whatever doesn't mean it's like a bad song. There's just so much stuff lodged in here. I'm still singing Wasted Years over and over again the next day, or Baby Shark, or whatever. I mean, like, there's, like, just those fucking earworms that get stuck in your head. Like, there's only so much real estate I can put in this thing. So, like, that's why we listen to these albums over and over again, like, to kill off the other things. Like, man. Anyway, but you see what I'm trying to say, right? Like, it's I keep going back to, not every Maiden song is going to be Wasted Years, and in some realm of thought, I'm like, well, that's unfortunate, but at the same time, like, they're not going to do the same thing over and over again.
Right.
And
I don't think you can expect that. Certain bands, and we've said this time and time again, certain bands can get away with kind of recording the same album over and over and over again to a certain degree of success. I just, I don't know. I think if Iron Maiden continued on that sort of sameness of the records of, like, say, the early 80s, before I would say before Power Slave, before they kind of started getting a little more into longer songs, I think it would have gotten boring. It would have just gotten predictable, and it would have been like, okay, here comes the gallop, and here comes this, and here,
yeah,
it's good that
yeah. They
they've
pushed it as
changed.
far, yeah, they pushed it as far as they could.
Right.
Like, and then like the fact that I think they wanted to go longer and proggier after Seventh Son. I think Seventh Son was the true bridge gap, and I love Seventh Son.
No, it's one of my favorite
That
records of theirs.
and the reason I
Yeah.
love Seventh Son so much is probably one of the reasons that I don't like No Prayer for the Dying like almost at all, because I feel like they dumbed themselves down because they thought they had to. And that's always been my
Mm-hmm.
thing about No Prayer for the Dying, is that because there's elements of going back to what they were getting at on Seventh Son with Fear of the Dark. It's not all there. It's not a strong album top to bottom, but when it hits,
Yeah.
I mean, come on, what are the best songs on there besides Be Quick or Be Dead? I think the two best songs on Fear of the Dark are Afraid to Shoot Strangers and Fear of the Dark.
Yeah.
And the fact, I think that's them like, okay, this is where what we really should be doing. So not every song is going to be instantly memorable, but that's what we're dealing with here now,
Right.
Like Dickinson didn't do that in his solo career either, and Dickinson writes punchier, catchier things, but his albums are real good. I like listening to them, but then every now and then he'd be like, it's in the tower. It's like, yeah, there you go. But
Yeah.
everything else is cool. It doesn't make anything else invalid. It's just a different kind of song. I know I've said this over and over again today, but you know, that's really, if you're not willing to accept that in your music and you don't like that, great. This is not your band anymore, or it's never going to be your band.
Yeah.
So
That's the thing. Like, that's fine. I can accept people that if this just isn't their thing.
yeah,
What I can't accept is when it isn't their thing, but they want to question people like me and anyone else who has been, following the band for a long time and, doesn't necessarily reject what they're doing. I hate this whole notion that, well, I was there in 1983 and I saw the real Iron Maiden. Who fucking cares? You know?
oh, so that they're touring under a hologram now. Did I miss something?
Yeah.
Or
Like, so I'm sorry I was born in fucking 1976 and I was only fucking
yeah,
7 years old in 1983.
yeah, yeah. And you might have been drunk, so you don't know. I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, it's like I love the like, oh yeah, Power Slave. I'm like, oh, you mean that one with Rhyme of
Right.
the
Yeah,
Ancient
exactly.
Mariner? Yeah, it's like, okay, sure, Empire of the Clouds is like twice as long. I get that, but it's the same kind of approach. It's the same kind of journey that you're on. Like, these are musical equivalents to Lord of the Rings at this point, like what
Right.
Yes was doing. I mean, like, so when they did that and you lost your mind, it was okay then, but I
Right.
guess they were just like, okay, if they do it every now and then, it's fine. It's like Metallica eased into that too.
For
And
sure.
all the average on Hardwired was like 6-7 minutes probably a
Yeah.
song. So I mean, it's just, like I said this earlier on in the show, nostalgia is a really hard glass ceiling to break through. So every one of these new albums that come out, they don't have a leg up on anything. The only leg up they have is any kind of anticipation that a really hardcore fan would have. Once you get past that point, like what I need to do, maybe getting past a year of this, is to be like, well, am I still going to want to pick it up a year from now?
Okay.
So,
Well, I mean, before we get to the next track, let me just ask this really quick. Did you feel this way about the Book of Souls? And now that 6 years have passed, does that record feel a whole lot better to you as a whole? I mean, you mentioned Empire of the Clouds. I love that song. It doesn't feel
yeah,
like it's almost 20 minutes to me.
yeah.
I just think it's so beautifully recorded and the piano and all. I mean, that song is just amazing to me. But what do you think?
I instantly loved the Book of Souls record, but
Me too.
that's because I think maybe because Final Frontier was a little underwhelming. It's a
Yeah,
pretty good record.
I could agree with that.
Pretty good. Book of Souls was like, okay, they stepped it up again.
Hmm.
So that being said, this album following Book of Souls, I think that's why I'm having that kind of thing with it
Interesting.
where okay, I liked Book of Souls more than this initially. So not being so much scared, but I just don't have a better thing to say. I don't have a better word to replace it with. But I didn't the fact that I didn't instantly love this record the way I did Book of Souls, and it's basically the same kind of record, is where I'm kind of like, huh. So maybe, I don't know. I don't know where I'm at as far as that goes. But
All right.
I listen to Book of Souls a lot and I still pick it up. And maybe it's one of those things, kind of like Book of Souls even went up higher for me when I saw the tour. So let's say it comes to town and I see it and I'm like, okay, I'm hearing things in this song now I didn't before. Hey, there's less synths on this song because they're playing it live. I know they have an off-stage synth player, and the only time they never hit the guy was brilliantly on the when they revisited the Maiden England set, because they had him up there in the riser
Right.
area. So like so but still, like once I go through all of that, and I'm not trying to be like an apologist here. I'm just saying like when I heard this record, I'm like, this is not a bad record, but I don't know what kind of record it is for me right now. But that's kind of cool because it's not an instant thing sometimes, that's what art is. Sometimes it's not
Sure.
instantaneous. Th- I'm sure plenty of people have like their favorite movies of all time, maybe the first time they didn't get it.
Hmm.
I know a lot of people that hated The Big Lebowski when they first saw it. Now it's one of their favorite movies.
Wow, really? Somebody actually really hated that movie?
Well, it's
It's a
not so
great
much the
movie.
hate, they were just like, what is this?
Yeah,
I
it is.
saw
It is
I think it
strikingly odd at first, I'm sure. For
I, I think it was Kevin Smith said that he went and saw that movie with Chris Rock when they were filming Dogma, and Chris Rock just yelled out in the middle of the movie, "They just made a Cheech and Chong movie!" It's like, and when you go back and watch it, it's not a Cheech and Chong movie, but you're like, huh, like, so that's all I'm trying to say. I've been just kind of saying it over and over again in different ways for the last hour or so, but sometimes art is growing, and I'm kind of weirded out by the fact that I didn't like this as quick as I did Book of Souls. So
maybe it would be fun to do like a follow up someday, even if it's like a few
yeah,
minutes when we're talking about another Iron Maiden record.
yeah, maybe so. But we'll do like the Maiden catalog at some point.
Oh
I mean,
yeah, I mean,
because by this point you'll be done with. Hey, why not? I mean, I'm putting it out there. You'll be
I
done
want
with
to
the
do
Kiss one
I
by
want to
then.
do Iron Maiden roundtables.
Yeah,
Some of my friends know about it. You know who you are.
yeah, that could be
So
that might be the way to go.
yeah.
All right.
Well, the last thing I'll say about Time Machine before we move on to the next track.
There's not as much Ronnie James Dio on it. I
No,
noticed that.
there's definitely not enough Ronnie James Dio on it.
Yeah,
If they could have resurrected him somehow, or they could have used the
yeah,
hologram with his wife's permission, and perhaps we could have had some fucking Ronnie
yeah,
James Dio.
yeah. Just a
But
little sample. A
yeah,
living in a
a
time
little bit, a little,
machine.
just a smidge.
Yeah.
So, but the last thing I wanted to say about the track is I really like the great unexpected breakdown that occurs at 4 minutes and 30 seconds, leading to the guitar solos. Just another
Yeah.
one of those great Iron Maiden quick surprise transitions that you would probably say they might be borrowing from some of the more modern day prog bands.
Yeah. But when it's on, it's on. Like
Mm-hmm.
I like when that kind of things come in. Like that was, and I'm glad you mentioned that particular breakdown. That's a real high part of the record for me. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well, there we agree on that. So that's good. At least we
yeah,
we have some common ground here. All right.
yeah.
So let's move on. Let's move on to the next track. And now forget about any short songs. Those are done.
Oh yeah, we're
From here on out, we are in full epic mode. And this is the shortest track of the last four. And we're talking about Darkest Hour, another track written by Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson. This one tops out at 7 minutes and 20 seconds. And I believe this one is very reminiscent of other tracks written by Smith and Dickinson. Reminds me of something that could have been on one of Bruce's solo albums, or could have been on an album as far back as you mentioned it before, Fear of the Dark. And this is for Andrea. This song could have been on there instead of a song he hates called Wasting Love.
He's still not an honest man, is he? One of these days, he'll be an honest man.
One of these days. But right now, he fucking hates that song.
No.
Well, he hates the video probably even more. Anyway, I like the guitar solo section. I think it's great in this track as well. And just, very dramatic choruses between the vocals and the synths behind them. So
yeah, you're right. This could have been on Fear of the Dark, or it could have been on Balls to Picasso. Wouldn't have been out of place on either of these records. So that's all I need. Be like, okay, yeah, that's thumbs up for me.
Yeah. It's a very dramatic song, right? Even the stuff with the water in the beginning and at the end, where as it's fading out, it's just, you just picture like this, dramatic scene taking place. Dun 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 dun, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
You picture them playing live, and they have like like an orchestra behind them. It's just really, really well done. If they were trying to achieve like this cinematic like landscape for this track, they nailed it here.
Yeah. And I'm definitely giving Maiden a pass, like in that kind of a sense, because if I'm listening to some like random European power metal band, I'd be like, fuck you. But I'm like, no, this is great. It's fucking Maiden, baby.
So
I mean, I know that's wrong, but hey, man, they earned it. They earned that shit.
Oh yeah, I think then some. They've earned it at this point. I mean, man, they've been around for over 40 fucking years.
40 plus years, yeah.
All the all the lineup changes before Maiden became Maiden. I mean, especially Steve Harris. I mean, he's earned it, if anything. Shit, when did he start Iron Maiden? Like 1975.
Yeah,
the initial Smiler and all that.
Yeah, Smile.
God,
yeah.
I mean, just think about that.
That early years DVD is great.
I love it. I wish another sidebar. I wish they would continue with the
they haven't really been doing those.
The documentaries. That's the series that they ended off at. They ended right before Bruce was about to leave the band. It's like, I know. Come on.
Well, I mean, I guess they're like, do we need to resurrect Raising Hell? But maybe we can get like one of the maybe we can get the Donington show or something like the France show that they use some of it for
one of the worst DVDs of all time.
It's so bad.
If I could do like the hype guy voice, like hyping that.
Oh yeah.
Don't buy this. It is the absolute worst of all time. Maiden fans call it a total piece of shit.
That's pretty good. I mean, the subtext that people have analyzed that in retrospect, the death at the end and all that, like it's
Andrea Verderame was quoted as, "What the fuck am I watching?"
Shitburger?
All right, let's move on. And once again, as I mentioned before, we're really in Epicville now. Forget about it. These last three tracks, all 10 minutes plus. So the first one here, and this is also with these last three tracks, these are all written by Steve Harris. So this is the first one of the last three solely to be written by Steve Harris. And the title of this song is Death of the Celts. And it tops out at 10 minutes and 20 seconds. And for me, a big highlight of this song are those Celtic guitar sections, which first begin at 5 minutes and 14 seconds. Again, one of my favorite moments on the album as a whole. And great long section of guitar solos, very reminiscent to me of something we might have heard on Power Slave. And to me, another great intro and outro, bookending everything that's in between everything throughout all 10 minutes and 20 seconds of this epic track. So what do you think?
And by the way, like I kind of look at these last three songs as kind of like one thing, but they do have their own style. But one thing that's decently consistent, I think at least in 2 out of the 3 songs, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sorry if my memory is a little fuzzy, but I actually have, and probably because of my enjoyment of Book of Souls, I've really been enjoying that Steve Harris approach where he's just strumming on the strings. Like that's really neat. And for a guy that's always played with his hands, like the fact that he's doing that now after playing for 100 years and being one of the best finger picking bass players of all time. And now he's like, I'm going to strum this thing like an acoustic nylon guitar, like like I'm just playing in a, a Tex-Mex restaurant somewhere on a Saturday night. And but I dig it. I really dig this new sound that he's found.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Me
think it
too.
really adds a really cool layer to these epic songs. Not that I needed in every one of these epics, but to kind of hear it every now and then, now that's triggering my memory of like, hey, my favorite song on Book of Souls has that
Mm.
on there. But I just think it's a cool little thing that he's doing now. And the fact that he's, changing it up a little bit, not, not doing the same stuff over and over again. I really like that approach. This one and the one after this are my favorites of these long songs on there. The last song is good, but I think it's kind of it. This might have to be one of those records, and I'm gonna do another broad bass jump here for this, but this could be one of those albums where I might do that listen where I listen to just one song a day. And
Hmm.
because man, these three songs in a row, it'll wear you out. It'll probably finish off most people. But I was really into these last three songs, but the first two I think are the strongest. But yeah, great stuff. I'm you know I could
It's
talk
crazy.
in more bass stuff, but yeah,
If I just try to add up the times in my head, talking like 33 minutes for three songs.
yeah,
It's a long time. But honestly,
yeah.
to me, they go by fast. I don't know why. And I've seen people say this about the record. It doesn't feel like it's 81 minutes or a little over 81 minutes. It
Right.
doesn't feel that way to me. And I listened to it again this morning before we got together here to record because I just wanted to refine my notes and listen out for some other things that maybe I might have possibly missed. And again, I was just like, wow, the record still really goes fast for me after 10 plus listens. So let's move on to the second to last track, another big epic written by Steve Harris. This one, I believe this is the longest song on the entire record
I
at
believe you're right.
12 minutes and 39 seconds. And the title of the song is The Parchment. So some of my notes here. Great yet eerily disturbing intro and outro with Steve Harris's bass, to the point that you were saying before,
Yeah,
along with the guitars and synths. And when the drums kick in, to me, it sort of becomes Maiden's version of Led Zeppelin's Kashmir, at least to me. Another great showcase of all three lead guitar players during the midsection of the track, and great up-tempo section beginning at 9 minutes and 54 seconds with more guitar solos that gradually lead into the outro.
yeah. Good build, good peak right there at the end. No complaints at all. Uh, Probably along with "Writing on the Wall," my favorite song on the record. These like I said, these last two are kind of tied, top three for sure. Like "Writing on the Wall" and these last two, or these first two of the last three. What am I trying to say? Anyway, you see what I'm trying to say, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Full disclosure for everybody listening, I didn't make a ton of notes here. I was just trying to go off, what I was feeling because I knew Pete would bring the science, and I appreciate that, Pete. Uh, but yeah, like that's really just going with the gut here, and it's like
That's fine.
that was uh that was what I was hoping it would. And this really sparked me into the record. Like I said, "Writing on the Wall." Some of the shorter songs did get me a little bit more, but hearing these two songs in a row here towards the end, I was like, okay, this justifies like the approach that you were taking here. Like these songs are about, they're not just long songs for the sake of being long. They've got killer layers to them. The musicianship is top flight. I like those songs so much. I was like sitting there like being nervous for the last song. Like, is it gonna finish it off, or is it gonna be kind of a letdown? I'm not quite sure where I'm at with it because I've just they're so crazy and epic, and then like you get another one right after that. It's it's
Yeah.
it's insane. Like
Yeah.
I don't own a lot of albums like this. It's like
No, me neither.
I referenced In the Court earlier, and there's a couple of quickies on there, and it just kind of goes up and down and up and down. But they don't have three 10-minute plus songs in a row.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Prog isn't really one of the main genres that I would say that I listen to and own. So yeah, this is definitely a unique one within my
Yeah,
entire music collection. I mean, yeah, I have the collection of Rush records back there. You could probably see in the crate, And I do listen to some other bands like Dream Theater, but I'm not like a huge prog
Right.
fan. But the
Even
bands that do it
Rush didn't write terribly long songs consistently is the thing.
right,
There's not one Rush album in the world that does this. It's just like
right,
it's crazy. It's insane.
yeah. If they had a bunch of 10-minute tracks, they were probably 5 tracks on the album,
Yeah,
not,
exactly.
not 10.
Yeah, isn't
Plus,
Clarissa Steele's like that, isn't it? Like
right, but plus you're
it's
considering the time. Bands were probably told records got to be like 45 minutes, guys.
yeah, exactly.
Maiden's just like, we
Five
fucking do what
songs.
we want now.
Yeah, double CD, double album. Like the fact that they have that much confidence in their fan base is kind of an interesting way of being like, yeah, we can kind of just do whatever we
Especially
want.
since like the Kiss fan base, a lot of fucking fans are finicky. It's just
Yeah,
no other way of putting it, and that's
yeah,
fine. But
yeah,
just like I said before, don't try to fucking ruin it for everybody else who enjoys the
yeah,
goddamn records.
yeah, exactly. But it's like they're almost though to the point where it's like a Pearl Jam or Grateful Dead kind of thing, like where they could go out there and have a different set every night, and their fans would go, "This is amazing,"
Mm-hmm.
like
Oh, you
they
see those
don't.
fans a lot. Like, I love the live show, but I hate the new records. But they still go to the show.
That is the thing too. I think it's definitely more so the rest of the world. It's not as much in America. Like if they were gonna have that approach, they'd have to play like more like Coliseum size than arena size. Because
Mm-hmm.
they could do arenas easy here, but they'd have to promise you hits. They can kind of quote unquote fool them so many times to where people are like, well, I won't go back and see that if they're gonna
Right.
do that. Like the Final Frontier tour was one of those ballsiest things ever. So it just makes me think of that when I see what they're doing with these records all the time. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna do it the shit we want. Yeah, we'll throw in a couple of short songs, but that's not really our thing nowadays. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the album closer. And just as we've been saying repeatedly, a final epic to close out the album, solely written by Steve Harris. This one, a little bit shorter than the Parchment, topping out at 11 minutes and 19 seconds. And the song is called Hell on Earth. For me personally, my second favorite intro on the entire record.
That's a good one.
Great use of Bruce's vocals matching the guitar melodies in the background during the verses. To me, they can easily get stuck in your head.
Yeah.
The simple David Gilmour-esque guitar leads that are repeated throughout this song in various places. For me, definitely some of my top favorite moments on the album. Things like, sections like that. I love that shit. So those parts get stuck in my head all the time ever since this record came out.
Yeah, it
section.
It's really cool.
And live, you just brought it into my head. When they play that song live, fans are just going to be going along with that melody.
Oh, yeah, the soccer hooligan chant. Yeah.
Yeah, Maiden's good at that. So,
yeah.
The sections for me here in this song where Bruce is singing "Love and Anger," "Life in Danger," "Lost in Anger," "Life in Danger," more of my favorite moments on the album. The last time this occurs is especially great, leading into more of those David Gilmour-esque guitar leads, which also signals the end of Bruce's vocals on the album and leading into the final 2 minutes and 14 seconds of the album, where is that really slow fade away. And again, my opinion, if Iron Maiden fans were hoping for a modern day classic album closer along the lines of past successes like Hallowed Be Thy Name, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, Fear of the Dark, honestly, I think this is the one in this modern day era.
And you can't discount Empire of the Clouds either.
No, I'm not discounting that at all. But
like that one's so insane. I thought that was going to be the last album they ever did. Like,
right.
and this could be the same kind of thing. Like, maybe they are approaching even if they don't say this is our last album. Maybe at this point, especially nowadays, you see the way things have been going the last few years. That's got to be the approach. Like, we're going to end it in the way that if people said that's the last song they ever put on a record, it makes total sense. And
I agree with that. If this is the last studio track they ever record, what a hell of a way to go out,
Yeah, exactly.
But I think, like, you said, like Empire of the Clouds, The only difference I see with Empire of the Clouds and this one, as far as becoming, later on, like a modern day Iron Maiden classic that you could say in the 2000s, Empire of the Clouds is such a long track. Not that this one is much shorter, but I think because of the fact that it is, 11 minutes versus what's Empire of the Clouds, that's like around 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit more in Hell on Earth that I think would have more lasting, memorable staying power. Like the parts I mentioned before, Love and Anger, Life and Danger, like things like that. Like I said, things like, Fear the Dark, like, you never can forget. Those tracks are iconic and embedded in fans' heads. I definitely think that this has the potential, with time, to become one of those tracks. Empire of the Clouds, that is one of the greatest album closers for sure that they ever recorded. It's definitely one of my favorites. But I think this one just has a little more of the staying power because, I guess, again, it is shorter and there's a little more, parts that are gonna stick in your brain, a little bit faster and, remain there more with time.
Yeah.
So there we have it. We've gone through all 10 tracks. And again, for me personally, I think this is a great effort overall. It's not a perfect album, but I think some of the harsh criticism it's getting, I don't know. I can't really agree with it. I think it's a great effort. For me personally, I listened to it back to back with Book of Souls because I also wanted to know for myself, which album do I feel is better? Because I think a lot of us do that. We compared the previous album, like you said before, Final Frontier versus Book of Souls, no question, Book of Souls.
Yeah.
I really, sat down with these two, listened to them back to back. And at the end of, my listen to both of them back to back, I thought Senjutsu was just a little bit better overall than the Book of Souls. And I don't think it's because it's fresh and it's a brand new record. I try to, remove those blinders and, things like that where, it's new and, you're just hearing it now, for less than a month. Whereas, you've been listening to the other record for 6 years. But I truly think that they outdid themselves with this one. I think the production is a little bit better, despite my little notes about the synths. And despite the fact that so many people are, giving Kevin Shirley a hard time for his production. And, I agree with certain things that are lacking in the production. But I think overall, when you listen to it in headphones, when you listen to it, especially on vinyl, I think this record shines through a bit more than the Book of Souls, all around production, songwriting, and the song structures. So
I'm going to do a back-to-back listen with both records too. I'd like to do that, actually.
Okay.
You've convinced me to do this.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking like, the 5-star rating scale, I have to give this album 4 stars. And, just on a presentation standpoint, like, holy shit, great album cover art, the inserts and everything. I mean, you really couldn't ask as an Iron Maiden fan for a better production job and better effort, especially if, you think about Dance of Death.
Yeah. But like overall packaging, every time out of the gate, Maiden is a top 5 band when it comes to like, man, you really just kind of want to own all of it. Like, I honestly didn't feel the need to ever own the Blaze stuff, but the way that they like make that packaging and like, doing the genius thing with the face on the, the spine and everything, and even just the album covers themselves, it's like you feel like you got to own it all.
Yeah.
Top 5 packaging of all time. It's one of those bands, just like Scotty Ian said before. If that first album didn't look the way it looked, maybe I would have never picked it up. If I hadn't seen Peace of Mind in a record store when I was 4 years old, I may not have the same kind of feeling about Maiden. So it's an important thing. So right there on the surface, the album cover's killer. The music does deliver more often than not. If you know how to save a few bucks and, flip a few records to justify like a $50+ vinyl, then yeah, I get it. It's a neat piece of art for sure. Just like Book of Souls.
Very well said. And I couldn't agree more. So I was saying, jokingly before we were recording that, this record and the packaging. It's a bit of a task, to sit here while I'm trying to talk and display the contents inside. But we can, however, try a little share screen since we are on Zoom, and I do have the pictures of the contents inside the Amazon exclusive vinyl. And I'm going to give this a little shot here now. Never done this on the show, so for those watching on YouTube and those that are listening, you might want to check in on my YouTube channel, Pete LaRussa 28, and search the I Am Vinyl podcast. And you can see all this content that I'm about to show now. There we go.
Hey.
So this is my post of the record when it first arrived, and threw it up on my Facebook and on the I Am Vinyl Facebook page, which I encourage everybody to look for us, and we will add you. We are a private page. We are trying to keep away some of the trolls and assholes that Joey and I have dealt with on other sites. Here's the back cover. And there's LP number 1 there. So it is a silver and black marbled vinyl edition, but it looks a lot more silver. I don't really see a lot of black, although other records in the set are definitely darker. So that's where I think there's more of the black in effect. But you can see here with this picture with all the center rings, all 6 of them, you could see the different varying colors of each vinyl record.
I like the middle one the best. It's my favorite. But that kind of greenish almost.
The green one with the one here?
Yeah, I dig that. The third picture,
Yeah, I really like what they've done here. They did this with Book of Souls too. They gave you unique center ring labels on each record.
Yeah.
You have Eddie on the front side, and you have the track lists on the back sides. Yeah. And then, right here, look at all this. I mean, the triple gatefold inside is just one of their greatest pieces of artwork, I think.
They're on such a roll, man. Between Book of Souls, the Mexico City live album, and this, they're just on freaking fire. What packaging.
Yep. So there you have it. That was the Amazon exclusive triple silver and black marbled vinyl. And so, Joey, we have to actually pick out which songs we're going to play. So we want to make this a favorite 5, and we'll choose our favorite collective tracks. And that's what we'll play right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Since we're going to make this partially an album review show, partially an I Am Vinyl favorite 5, these are the 5 tracks that Joey and I have chosen to represent this pressing, the Amazon exclusive silver and black marbled 180 gram vinyl. And the tracks we're going to play right now are as followed: Stratego, The Writing on the Wall, Lost in a Lost World, Days of Future Past. So 4 songs in a row that are actually in succession on the record. And we're going to close with the album closer, Hell on Earth. So let's play those tracks right now. Aye. All right, I am back. And that was Stratego, The Writing on the Wall, Lost in a Lost World, Days of Future Past, and Hell on Earth from the Amazon triple 180 gram silver and black marbled vinyl edition of Iron Maiden's latest record, Senjutsu. Just another quick note before I close here. This album happens to have their highest charting debut ever on the Billboard Top 200 Albums chart, as just a few days ago, it was revealed that the album would debut at number 3. And in terms of physical sales, I've seen it's actually number 1 for the week. So I guess with all the streaming and all the other various statistics that currently make up the Billboard Top 200 Albums chart, Maiden didn't quite have enough to hit number 1 on the Billboard Top 200 Albums chart. But apparently, as far as physical sales, they were number 1 for the week. So another pretty big achievement for Iron Maiden this late in their career. Joey had to take off as he had some prior commitments that he had to get to, but I thank him for his time with this album review episode, which I really enjoyed. And I hope those that are watching or listening also enjoyed our thoughts. And, you don't have to agree with us. So if you have any comments, please feel free to comment below on the YouTube video. Once again, we do have the Facebook I Am Vinyl page that I had showed a little earlier. So if you'd like to become a member, you could send me a private message on Facebook. And as always, I'd like to encourage you all to check out our other shows here at cnjradio.com. The Wrestling House Show, Rock Strikes 10, The Synaptic Empire, Talking Rock, and The Last Theater. So once again, thank you to Joey for joining me here on this album review of Iron Maiden's latest record, Senjutsu. And I hope any Iron Maiden fan who decided to tune in, at least if you don't agree with us, you appreciate what we've had to say about the record. So that's going to do it for me here with this episode of the I Am Vinyl podcast. And we're going to be back very soon with the next episode, as I plan on recording it within the next few days. So until then, we'll see you next time. And we thank you once again for tuning in here at the I Am Vinyl podcast, right here at cnjradio.com.